Happy 313 Day as we take a look at all things people, power, and politics. This is The Pulse, and I'm Tara Nasher. These days, the news cycle changing so quickly, you need to keep your head on a swivel, but we're here to get you caught up. And starting with developing news out of our state and the race for Michigan's soon-to-be open Senate seat. Why the race is starting to heat up now. Plus, the race for Detroit mayor is intensifying, and one of those candidates, businessman John Barlow, is in studio to discuss his message for voters and his goal for the city. But we start with some huge news for the thousands of workers fired by the Trump administration. A federal judge ordered the administration to reinstate them, saying the firings were directed by a personnel office that didn't have the authority to do that. That office was the Personnel Management Office. And the judge ordering the Veterans Affairs, Agriculture, Defense, Energy, Interior, and Treasury to immediately reinstate the jobs of federal workers. Specifically, the workers fired on or around February 13th and 14th. On top of that, the judge ordered the agencies to report back within a week with a list of probationary workers and how they followed the order. A lot of you weighing in on this story. Gretchen says if the workers weren't needed or weren't performing, they should have been laid off, while Kiki hopes they get back pay and says they should have gotten more of a warning that these cuts were coming. Melissa and John believe the fight isn't over and will work its way through the courts. Meanwhile, Eric says it's a good thing because there are checks and balances, adding, quote, "This is not The Apprentice." Of course, that's a reference to President Trump's former reality show. And if you want to weigh in, all you have to do is head to the Fox 2 Detroit Facebook page and make your voices heard. A former Columbia grad student and Palestinian activist Mahmoud Khalil arrested by ICE over the weekend, and today protesters gathered in and around Trump Tower in New York demanding his release. In the process, nearly 100 of those demonstrators were arrested. The demonstrators from the group Jewish Voice for Peace wore red shirts reading "Jews say stop arming Israel" and held up banners as they chanted "Bring Mahmoud home now." After warning the protesters to leave, police said they arrested 98 people on various charges, including trespassing, obstruction, and resisting arrest. Trump Tower serves as headquarters for the Trump Organization, and it's where the president stays when he's in New York. And Khalil has been dubbed a national security threat by the Trump administration, who accuses the 30-year-old of distributing pro-Hamas propaganda. Khalil was born and raised in Syria after his Palestinian grandparents were removed from their homeland. He's married to an American and is a legal permanent resident. He was arrested over the weekend and at his apartment in Manhattan, which is owned by Columbia University. While the Trump administration says he should be deported, a federal judge has extended a block on his deportation, allowing Khalil to remain in the U.S. until at least next week. All right, let's talk about 2026 now and the race to replace outgoing Senator Gary Peters. Turns out former Transportation Secretary and 2020 presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg will not run for the open seat. After moving his family to Michigan a few years ago, many thought he would run for the Senate seat or even Michigan governor, but now speculation is that he might be setting him up for a bid for president. But in a statement on X, which everyone still calls Twitter, he said he wasn't going for either. And that post went on to say, quote, "I remain enthusiastic about helping candidates who share our values and to understand that in this moment, leadership means not only opposing today's cruel chaos, but also presenting a vision of a better alternative." But one person who is expected to run is the woman here, State Senator Mallory McMorrow. According to two Associated Press sources, she could make her announcement next month. McMorrow spoke at the Democratic National Convention, you may remember last year, and she teased an announcement saying she'll have more to share soon. Former Republican Congressman and U.S. Ambassador Mike Rogers also expected to run again. Not yet, says Russian President Vladimir Putin when it comes to a 30-day ceasefire with Ukraine. Putin agrees in principle with the U.S. proposal, but says the terms still need to be worked out. Putin says he wants his own guarantees, including that Ukraine won't regroup during that time period, and notes that any agreement should pave the way to lasting peace. President Trump says he is encouraged by the remarks because time is of the essence in this situation.
He put out a very promising statement, but it wasn't complete. And yeah, I'd love to meet with him or talk to him, but we have to get it over with fast. You know, every day people are being killed. It's not like, as we sit here, 2 people will be killed. Think of it. 2 people are going to be killed during this little period of time. Thousands of people a week are dying, so we really don't have very much time. We have to make this fast.
Meantime, President Trump's top negotiator, Steve Witkoff, is meeting with Putin in Moscow right now to discuss the plan. Ukraine already agreed to a 30-day ceasefire earlier this week. And while negotiations continue with Russia, we're told that U.S. officials are working with Ukraine leaders to decide which land the country will keep in the deal. In the 3 years since Russia first invaded Ukraine, around 1 million people have been killed or injured. But that's not all that's going on in the world of politics, so let's run through some of our other top stories of the day, and that starts on Capitol Hill, where reports say that Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is indicating he will vote to advance Republicans' 6-month government funding bill in an about-face from earlier this week. He said before Democrats wouldn't allow it to pass, and this means it likely has enough support now to get through the Senate and to President Trump's desk, avoiding a shutdown. Schumer believes the shutdown would just give President Trump more power. And now to the Department of Education, where more than 20 Democratic state attorney generals, including Michigan's own Dana Nessel, sued, challenging the Trump administration's layoffs at the agency. The AG says that, or all of the AGs rather, say that it's essential and an illegal dismantling of the agency. And we've told you the president needs congressional approval to dismantle it. The lawsuit says the layoffs mean the department can't function or perform its duties. The spokesperson for the department hasn't yet commented. President Trump, though, withdrew his nomination for Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Director. Former Florida Congressman Dr. David Weldon was his man, but it looks like there was a chance he might not get enough Republican support. And several senators were concerned about Weldon's vaccine skepticism. He's seen as being closely aligned with Health and Human Services Director Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has shared anti-vaccine views in the past. And the acting counsel of the Internal Revenue Service is out. William Paul was removed from his role and replaced by a man named Andrew DeMello. Now, you might ask why we're talking about this. It's because DeMello is seen as a supporter of the Department of Government Efficiency. And Paul pushed back on DOJ's alleged push to share tax information with multiple agencies. The news also comes as the IRS plans massive layoffs. Well, from the budget battle to the new tariff threats, there is a lot going on with this administration. Former Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence and conservative commentator Jamie Rowe are all diving into it next, and you are watching The Pulse on Fox 2. Welcome back to The Pulse, looking at everything people, power, and politics. And here now to dive into the, not only the tariff issue, but also the ruling on the fired workers and the possible government shutdown that may be avoided now is former Democratic Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence and conservative commentator Jamie Rowe, but also a Republican strategist. And so let's start with that, Jamie, though, because there is so much happening so quickly under this administration that it has many people on both sides of the aisle, we've heard, worried because of the economy and people's, consumers. They're holding back and spending money. There's a fear of a recession. We saw the stock market completely, tank, basically. Is this good strategy?
I think it's excellent strategy. One thing that the president is doing right now is everything he said he was going to do during the campaign. He campaigned on all of it, and he's implementing exactly what he said he was going to do. So I don't know why people are surprised to see it coming. And quite honestly,
because the economy, I think it is that with the stock market the way it is, people not spending money, at the, not going out to restaurants as much, they're fearful.
The inflation report that came out yesterday for the first month of Donald Trump's presidency showed inflation declined in the month of February. So the economy is going to be great. And one thing, and you saw this particularly on the tariffs with UAW President Shawn Fain, who came out and said that Donald Trump's tariffs are long overdue and are what are needed to bring American auto jobs back. President Trump isn't campaigning on behalf of the company, or isn't governing on behalf of the companies. He's governing on behalf of the workers. And what he wants is more jobs in America being done by Americans.
And obviously cutting waste, everybody agrees with that. But are we going too far, Brenda, when you look at what's going on, the fear? Now we have lawsuits and people losing their jobs. In fact, in D.C., they can't even sustain how many people or really absorb the job losses at that point.
My grandmother used to have a saying, common sense isn't common. It's common sense when you're dealing with a workforce. People who go to work not for pleasure, but to sustain a living to take care of their families, that overnight you give them a notice that they have to leave, and not leaving and in some cases just saying leave, and if you don't leave, we'll fire you. That is stressful. And when we must address waste and efficiency in our government. I don't disagree with that. But however, if you're the leader of this country and you're allowing an outside person to come in without any regard, he didn't take an oath of office to serve and protect our people. He is literally just have a mandate to destroy. And he even used a chainsaw, which is showing how his disrespect for the people that he's impacting.
Yes, because of course, and for instance, with the Department of Education, we've talked about it, he can certainly cut it down to bare bones. Can't eliminate it. You need Congress to do that. But right now, it doesn't look good. But you know, Jamie, when you see all these federal departments, why isn't the Department of Defense being cut at all? I mean, it increased in the amount of money. Many feel that it's because Elon Musk is making big bucks off of it.
I think it has nothing to do with Elon Musk in what he's making off the Department of Defense.
But he has huge contracts.
Quite honestly, the people get value for their money for what Elon Musk does with SpaceX and Starlink and other things. Give value for the money that we pay for those services. And the Department of Defense is going to be impacted. Fact is that the DOGE folks are inside the department now. Secretary Hegseth is working very closely with them. And I think that you're going to see a lot of change coming within the Department of Defense as we put a focus back on defending the country and away from things like the woke ideology that had gotten in there under Biden, and climate change being the biggest national security threat to us. I mean, just aren't true. We're going to be prepared for battle, and that's what they're focused on doing.
Well,
the Department of Defense.
And you know, based on a lot of Biden's policies, Michigan invested when it came to energy, clean energy, and battery plants. We are the Motor City, and certainly we have all of these assembly factories to be able to support that. But should we be worried about these layoffs that possibly could come with that and the prices of everything really here in the connected to vehicles?
I guarantee you, if my friend here lived in California and his house burned to the ground, he would have a different concept of what is national security, clean drinking water. When we talk about the use of land and energy, how we are extracting oil and from the ground and destroying the opportunity for farming and polluting our waters, my goodness, that is a behavior problem for us as Americans, and it is a responsibility. We must fund those things that's going to make America a place that is safe for us to live in, and also protect those human right values we believe in.
Well, that's what's interesting too, though, is that many people have felt that it's great to have President Trump. They voted for him because he's the rich businessman. He's going to make our country rich. However, now a lot of people are looking at it saying, you know, they're treating it like a private equity firm. They're taking it apart, dismantling everything, and then going to build it up the way they want in the way of profits.
Well, but the fact is, who's complaining about it right now are the people on Wall Street who are used to having government pumping up the stock market so they all get rich. And who's not complaining about it are people like Shawn Fain and UAW and auto workers who see Trump's tariff policy and his tax policy is designed to bring jobs back to America.
The challenge is there is no plan.
Yeah, there is a plan.
It changes every hour on the hour.
It really doesn't change. The fact of the matter is, on tax policy, for instance, he wants to cut the corporate tax rate from 21% to 15%, but only if you make your product in America. That means you hire more Americans to build more products, you keep the value and you keep the money here in America instead of outsourcing to places like Mexico or Canada.
And a lot of businesses agree with that, but it's going to take some time. And in the meantime, are we going to have local businesses hurting? I don't care if it's the tariffs on the liquor and the wine, or you have the businesses and restaurants that are going to have to absorb that, or the customers, or you have vehicles, or whatever the case might be. It seems that it's going down to the little people who are going to pay the price the most.
I think the little people are the ones that are going to benefit the most. First of all, they're going to get the biggest tax cut.
After they suffer.
And well, you know what? Change isn't easy. You tell me the people haven't been suffering under 20% or 10% inflation under Joe Biden. That is what hurt the American people. And Donald Trump, he had tariffs in his first term and zero inflation. So I don't think that the experts who are some of the people who have helped to bring us to $37 trillion in debt are always right. So let's try this thing and let's see how it goes going forward. I have great confidence in the president.
Yeah, and we did spend a lot of money. I mean, we're huge debt. I mean, did we take it too far to be able to have to take it this far back?
Trillions of dollars of debts we're in was contributed by Republicans, Donald Trump as well as Biden. So you cannot sit there and blame Biden for the sun not coming out. We have a responsibility to evaluate the efficiency of our government to reduce debt, but we have had time after time, to Donald Trump's credit, he is putting first and foremost looking at our debt. But my goodness, when you take a sledgehammer and say we need to clean up the house and just break everything in the house, is that cleaning it up or is it destroying the house? And that's where we are now. He has shown lack of mentality, sensitivity, compassion to be able to take a government and reshape it. He's just throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Well, I think that remains to be seen. Let's see what happens.
Right, and yes, things, as we've said, it's happening by the hour. It's changing. So we know, look at the government shutdown. That was all changing as well, and we'll get to that a little bit as well. All right, we are diving into the race for Detroit mayor next on The Pulse. One of the candidates, businessman John Barlow, is in the studio talking about his goals for the city and what he wants voters to know. The Pulse is back in 3 minutes. It's people, power, and politics. Thanks so much for staying up late with us on Detroit's only nightly political talk show. And joining us to discuss his candidacy for Detroit mayor is businessman John Barlow. And we thank you for being with us. We are really taking the time to interview every candidate that is running for Detroit mayor, and the list is growing. Now, in terms of your run, how do you differentiate yourself from some of these other candidates?
Well, I'm not a career politician. And Taryn, just thank you for having me on, and thank you for being very fair to all the candidates. But I'm not a career politician. I'm a businessman, and I'm a problem solver. I know how to execute, I know how to build, I know how to innovate, and I truly believe that I can bring what it takes to this leadership position in order to make it work for all Detroiters.
Are you busy? It does seem like there's somewhat of a trend as we have businessman Donald Trump that is running our country. How would you look at our city if you were running a business? How would you try to make it run more efficiently, smoothly, and cut the waste?
Well, it's not so much about cutting the waste as it is to getting to the core of the problem. There's a lot of resetting that has been done with our current mayor, Mayor Mike Duggan, and I want to double down on his results. I really want to accelerate growth, but I think there's some core leadership issues outside of City Hall that need to be addressed, and that really comes from facilitating relationships well enough in order to make sure that family becomes part of Detroit's fabric. And that fabric of hope needs to be reweaved in such a way that we make Detroit community again. Well,
families don't want to live or move or stay in Detroit unless there is safety and strong education for its kids. What are your thoughts on that? What needs to change?
Well, first of all, we need new family spaces. And in my plan that I will reveal on next Wednesday, March 19th at Detroit People's Food Co-op during my public announcement, I want to create 100 new family spaces. And not only that, I want to make sure that every Detroiter and every family has a home. I didn't say a house, I said a home. And that's to make sure that we continue to not let any Detroiter fall through the cracks.
Easier said than done.
Oh, it's definitely easier said than done. But I think that I've always taken a clinical approach to winning. In everything that I do, I'm a winner. And so with being able to really dig deep into the mentorship and into all the family things that take place in the community, I believe that we can very well push forward and make Detroit what it needs to be.
And you said that you want to build on what Mayor Mike Duggan has done for our city.
Definitely.
And not all the candidates do. I mean, some agree, most agree, but certainly they want to change. What do you really want to focus on that you thought he succeeded at? Maybe something that stood out that you maybe want to work against or work differently?
Sorry about that. I've been watching Mike Duggan all my life. From the 90s, sitting down with my mom at the Detroit Public Schools as she was the secretary of the board at the time. I've seen Mike Duggan go in and out of offices, and so I've seen how he's fixed problems. And because I'm a problem solver, I understand that that's important to winning, and I want to double down on his results. I think his results are necessary for the city. I think it takes a winning mindset to guide a team into the future, and that's what I plan on doing if elected mayor.
Yeah, we saw what he did there with the water main break and how quickly that came together. And maybe in the past, you know, some families who were impacted would take a long time for them to get back into their homes or even find a place to stay. That sort of quick action for you, I think people look to that. Are you worried, though, that you're not a career politician, that you might not be able to do that and have the same resources or know-how because of it?
Well, I come from Southwest Detroit, and hola, mi hermano and mi hermana. I went down, and I didn't post it on social media, but I went rapidly down to the rec center as well as to see, I believe, Reverend Colin over at Santos Church to understand where the resources needed to be and where they needed to be redirected. And I believe the city did a great job. I think the infrastructure is in place. I just think the connectivity amongst the leaders needs to improve. Real quickly, your thoughts, transparency. How important? It's unimaginably important. I believe a participatory democracy, in which I've been definitely quoted in for my national advocacy for democracy, but most of all, civic engagement is beyond important. And I believe that because I understand tech, because I understand blockchain, because I understand what citizens need to be able to navigate the nuances of a city, I ultimately hope to guide Detroiters into a place in which they can see everything that's going on and understand how they can engage properly to help everybody pitch in, because Detroit only wins when we all pitch in. One sentence or one thought, if you were elected as Detroit mayor, what was the first thing you would concentrate on? First thing I'm going to concentrate on is hopefully expanding the ability to attract capital. And that starts with exploring not only schools and the influence the mayor has in schools, but it also starts with being able to rebrand the city to the point of attracting investment and making sure that we have major investors coming back to the city. We only have 3 or 4. We probably need to quadruple that. I think I'm the guy to do the job. All right, we'll have to wait and see. John Barlow, thank you for being here and sharing some of your views. I know that we'll talk to you many times before then, so thank you, before that voting day. Well, that is the Pulse for this Thursday night. Extra is next. I'm Tara Nasher. Have a great night.